Gizmo, you're up.
Huh?
He's talking to his dog because he's weird.
17 years old.
Mark's the Liberace of comedy. Look at my dog. Hi, Gizmo. Hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling. I'm your host, Mark Riccadonna, and with me as always,
Richie Byrne.
Richie, we just got back from Boston. That
We
was
did.
A fun trip.
It was a very fun trip. The great Gary Marino.
The great, what does Cotter call him?
The great jizz-filled.
Jism-filled.
Jism-filled. Sweet.
Jism-filled Gary Marino.
Tom Cotter. People only knew how dirty he is.
So when we were texting with him at that restaurant, he was working with Mark Kay at a storytelling show.
Yeah, he was telling me. Wow.
A few miles from my house. So that was kind of exciting.
That's cool.
Where a few miles from your house? Where? Is this the one on the farm?
This is the Woodstock of Pennsylvania. He was in Bucks County at the Z Block Theater.
I know the theater well. Know it well.
Yeah. Bucks County Z Block Theater. He was doing a comedy and storytelling night with Tom Cotter. That's exciting. Speaking of exciting, we got a great guest today.
Yes, we do.
Jump right in. We have the awesome John Fugelsang. John, how you doing?
Very good. Thank you very much. My parole officer has said that this sort of thing is what I need to do more of. So it's really good to see you all, and thank you. And please, give me a good review on Yelp, please, if you're listening. Thank you.
They should start reviewing comedians on Yelp.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be fantastic. There'd be so many comics not working that I'd be okay about.
Well, you might be one of them, though. That's the problem.
One can dream. One can dream that I could just
Mark Riccadonna will always be working. I am sorry. This man is always working.
Yeah.
He's always creating. And that's why this is probably not the best time to tell you, Mark, about the Ron Jeremy biopic I've written. I know that you've been offered the role many times before, but I really think that my script does justice to Ron and to your ghoulish resemblance to him. So I hope you'll read the script.
It is ghoulish. You're right. It's exactly.
What would the audition? What would the sides be for the Ron Jeremy audition?
I'd be like, okay, I want to hear you do the read again. This time, can you be more tragic, please? Can you be more tragic with an underpinning of sexual predator? Can I get that? Can I get tragic and evil at the same time? That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Spritz him with a lot more, so it looks like he's sweating. Do a lot of mouth breathing.
Yeah.
I think you can handle it, Mark.
I don't think this at all. This is a reference to a joke Mark was making before we began taping.
Boogie days.
So Richie and I had a fun car ride back. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I wanted to bring some of that conversation with John when we talked about our top 5 SNL cast members.
Oh yeah, and Mark berated me for mine.
Why?
Berated me.
Berate you?
Wait, I berated you?
Yes.
Every time I said somebody, you went, ugh. I made fun of you because I made a joke that you were going to pick the worst cast member. You didn't hear me say that he was the worst cast member, and then you picked him.
But he's not. That's not fair. You're not being fair.
What do you mean I'm not?
You're being fair. Why does everybody shit on Joe Piscopo? It's not right.
That's not right as well. He's the most muscular name in comedy. When I see Joe Piscopo do an act, I say, there's a man spent a lot of time in the gym getting ready for this comedy.
I'm just saying there's a lot worse comics who've been on SNL than Joe Piscopo.
I agree. I love Piscopo. I love Piscopo and Eddie Murphy together.
Yes.
I think you want to see great comedy. I tell everybody, watch the SNL episode that Don Rickles hosted in the 80s, where he and Piscopo have a running gag of slapping each other in sketches. And it's back when SNL almost understood what a running gag was for 5 minutes. And it's just brilliant.
I will go YouTube that. I want to see it. I love Don Rickles.
But it stretches over multiple sketches. There's a Romeo and Juliet sketch and a cop sketch, and they keep slapping each other throughout the podcast.
I saw they did the other day on YouTube. I saw on the roast for Lucille Ball. He goes, Lucy, I never liked her.
Oh my God.
Rickles is the best.
The thing is with him is now he's off the hook because there's Sebastian Maniscalco and
who's off the hook? Piscopo or Rickles?
Piscopo's off the hook. Every time anything was ever mentioned where it's an Italian American thing, Joe Piscopo had to be the guy they go to. And I just thought it was so weird that they would always, hey, we're celebrating Columbus Day. Let's cut to Joe Piscopo. What do you think of that?
You're just jealous, Mark.
Look.
You're like, hey, I'm Italian and a comedian. No one talks to me.
Now Sebastian gets all the work for the Italian comedian. So Piscopo won't be. Now we're all going to make fun of Sebastian.
And Mario Cantone says they could all go to hell. That's what Mario says. The best SNL cast members of all time?
Top 5. Yeah. Your top 5.
I had to go from 1 down.
If you're like me, there's Tim Kazurinsky and 4 other people, okay? That's it. That's Tim Kazurinsky, maybe Charles Rocket, and then 3 other people.
I haven't thought of Tim Kazurinsky in years.
Tim Kazurinsky is so funny on it. I'm not even kidding.
You're right. He is very funny.
SNL. He barely got work beyond SNL. So brilliant. So, I mean, those were embarrassing years. You had Eddie Murphy. And you had Joe Piscopo, who was quite funny on that show, and you had Julia Louis-Dreyfus,
right?
And then in the middle of and then Tim Kazurinsky, who was always funny in every sketch he did. He might have been the funniest performer on the seasons because come on, I mean, Piscopo was a great sketch comic. Eddie Murphy was a rock star. Eddie Murphy was a rock star. But Tim Kazurinsky was funny the way Gilbert was funny. He was just an inherently funny piece of
absolutely
humanity.
True. You're right.
So,
but then they had like Gary Kroger and Brad Hall, and they were awful.
Brad, you could argue was the biggest winner in SNL history because he married one of his co-stars, and it's lasted 40 years.
And went on, and she went on to make a lot of money.
Seems that way, yeah. And Gary Kroger, lovely guy. I remember when he ran for Congress, and I supported him. He's a nice guy. He always just got caught playing the straight man in a lot of those sketches.
Yeah.
But I still for me, it's almost like what's your favorite season or what's your favorite era of SNL beyond your favorite
that's good.
of all time. But for me, it's the Piscopo, Eddie Murphy seasons. If I had to say my favorite performer ever, it's a toss up between Eddie Murphy and John Belushi for very different reasons.
Interesting.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
See, Mark, it's for you. For you, it's Phil Hartman, right? Is number 1,
and then Eddie Murphy. Those are the 2. Those are my.
I feel like Aykroyd gets overlooked a lot, and I was thinking I wanted to put him in my top 5 just because he was, the Phil Hartman of the original Phil Hartman. It was always like we need someone to cover this. Just give it to Danny; he'll handle it.
Yeah. Like the film Dr. Detroit. Yeah. No Bill Murray's on your list? No,
I mentioned Bill Murray. I got yelled at.
I didn't yell at you.
Yeah, I got yelled
just
at.
said, "Oh, that's a good pick," but I like his movies more than his sketches on SNL.
No, you said
fair enough. Fair enough.
No, he did not say it's a good pick. He said that's stupid because he was better in
I
movies.
did not say that.
Where does
because the minute I mentioned David Spade, you were going. You wanted to pull the car over and kick me.
I did. I almost threw you out of my car when David Spade made you top 5. Yes, that's true.
I didn't know this.
It wasn't a good show.
Well, I just loved because we had a 18-year-old kid in the back seat. And
Richie picked up at a truck.
Yeah, and he immediately said Kenan Thompson, which just tells you your ears. You know what I mean? Like,
okay,
he could.
It's all about your age.
I thought that, but he did say Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, I mean, Hello, Randy Quaid. Anyone? Gentlemen?
I was saying to Mark, I really like the 85 cast, which only lasted one season with Billy Crystal.
Terry Sweet.
Terry Sweet. I forgot about Terry Sweet.
You mean the Ringer cast? You mean when they brought in Christopher Guest,
Guest,
Michael McKean,
Harry Shearer?
Yeah. You
Jim
know that
Booth.
thing where we developed new talent? What we're going to do is we're going to go out and spend a lot of money and get movie stars.
No, that's true, John. You're right about that, but they were funny. I mean,
It was
a lot
great. It was
yeah.
amazing. That Martin Short was on that season. It was
Yes.
insane.
Martin
Short was doing SCTV characters on SNL. It was crazy.
And Lovitz was tremendous.
Lovitz is so great.
Lovitz was great. Lovitz was great on SNL.
Tremendous. The Liar and God, everything he did was so good. And
the whole conversation got started because we were talking about Jiminy Glick.
yes, that is right. We were talking about Jiminy Glick, right? Who was an hysterical character, but I don't think like putting him as like in a movie was a bit much. That's not a character you can. After about 10 minutes, you're like, all right, I'm done with this character. Can we?
Yeah, it didn't have the legs like a goat boy had, for a long time.
Brewer. I forgot about Brewer. That was
yeah.
Colin. That cast.
Who's your favorite newscaster? This is another age. If you were the right age on a Weekend Update, like who is your favorite?
Charlie Rocket.
I think it's hard for me to say. I mean, I grew up watching Chevy do it, but I'd probably have to say either Dennis Miller or Norm.
Yeah.
See, I'm with you on the Dennis Miller, but even more than Norm, I love Kevin Nealon.
Mm-hmm. Nealon was great.
I love Kevin Nealon.
Aykroyd was great. Jane, you ignorant slut. Remember that?
But for me, in terms of like the news being high comedy and high social commentary at the same time, the only time they came close to that really was Dennis Miller before the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, when Dennis Miller had A. Whitney Brown come on, that was like the best. People sleep on A. Whitney all the time. I think he was amazing.
No, he was great. He was brilliant.
Great stand-up, great storyteller. We did a storytelling show, and he brought the house down. But he was so nervous telling a story that wasn't a bit that he would try to slip in bits. And we're like, it's like, dude, we're all into you. You don't have to try. Like, you can just tell a story. And he kept throwing in bits, and it was really awesome. I think he's in Austin, Texas. He's a DJ for a jazz station now.
Really?
Yeah, we stayed in touch for a little bit, and then he disappeared.
At the height of his fame, he kept a listed number in the New York City phone book. And I know this because my kid brother looked it up and called him once.
No way.
And he picked it up and talked to my brother. He was on SNL at the time, and he was just that kind of guy.
Wow.
Can I count Don DeVello as an SNL regular? Because Father Guido Sarducci is still maybe the funniest character that's ever shown up
Absolutely, I am.
All right,
yeah.
good.
And it's interesting because anybody under 30 probably has no idea who that is, or
I got my
under
dad
40.
for Christmas this year a Father Guido Sarducci vinyl. I found it in Nashville. I was like, this is my dad's Christmas present. He loved it. He was like, where did you find this?
Mark showed me videos of the clerk. What's the name of the show, Mark? Checked out. And you were tremendous.
So as the Fey German, thank you.
Yes, you were great.
Really a pleasure. I haven't seen it yet, but it was really a pleasure to work for Mark under any conditions. And I mean, the best part of it really. Next to when he released my child and I could go home, the best part of it was just working on camera with Mark and seeing how he works as a writer doing his own material. That was great. And when he let my son go, that was good too. So yeah, all around, I had a great time.
I did an episode and I had to play Scottish, and Mark only puts me in movies and films now and makes me do accents that I don't want to learn. But
same with me, and I don't do German.
Well, you did a great job.
I just come out and do my Werner Herzog impression for 5 minutes. That's all I do. I narrate every film like this.
Well, what was so great is when we were writing it, in my mind, I pictured the big Oopa like coming in with a beer, like, hello, how are you
Oh,
guys?
I
That's
would
what
have
I had.
I would have done that if anyone had given me direction on your set. I would have been happy.
We didn't want we when you
No, you
brought
were.
it,
It was
we went.
great.
It's one of those things when all of a sudden you see it done, you go, I didn't see it that way, but now I can't not see it that way.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
thank
So
you. It
it
was a lot of
became
fun.
more character, and it was like, no, this is how it has to be played. And
Right.
Tom, the director, it was like, I love this. I love this take on it,
I
and
would,
I that was one of the more fun ones to film. But the one in the back of my head going, oh, I hope I don't get canceled for this.
oh no, I thought it was nice. I wanted to go even farther with it. It was
Well,
fun. I hope to come back and do more.
Yeah,
that
for
I
sure.
couldn't agree more. Like I was thinking about that the day we were shooting. Mark was, oh my god, it'd be really cool to just bring the same actors back playing different parts. You
Yeah,
know,
like it always just all of a sudden,
I mean,
the people who know, and the people who
especially now,
don't.
we work for cheap. So. John, what are you working on? What?
Right now,
Yeah.
getting through this hour with you guys really is what's first and foremost. Surviving this interview, I'm doing this Sirius XM show every night, and then I'm writing a book and developing a solo show at the same time about religion and politics and comedy because I want to go for alienating the widest possible audience, and and then just getting back out on the road. I'm going to be up doing the Berkshires with our friend Kevin Bartini this coming weekend.
I love
I
Love
Kevin.
just
Kevin.
I just did a play for our friend Sean Lynch.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Really?
he wrote a play about Arthur Miller and Joe DiMaggio meeting up in a bar 6 years after Marilyn Monroe's death, and he asked me to play Arthur Miller, and I said, well, I'm not old enough, I'm not Jewish enough, and I'm not bald enough, but I'll do my best. And so we did a one act of that, and now I think it's going to be we're going to do it again a couple more times because I am really happy to return to acting, but only for roles I'm outrageously wrong for. So
John, I'm your guy. I can get you a ton of those roles.
great. That's what I live for. I mean, honestly, it was one of those things where like, have you ever had this? Like, someone offers you a role in a short film or a one act. It's not going to be a huge commitment for your life, and it would be very easy to say no because I'm all wrong for that. But you're so outrageously wrong for the role, you kind of want to try it just to see how not bad you can be. So yeah, I was happy to try to play Arthur Miller in his 60s.
Yeah.
And I was and for those who can't see it, my hair looks like Beethoven fucked Loki. Like I've got this long so it was kind of a challenge to use. I mean, 400 safety. It took me so many clips and safety pins to make my hair. It took me 6 hours to get to an airport, people. And but I was able to hide what I really look like, which is one of my life goals. And yeah, it was really fun to do. So but I'm back and forth a lot in LA because I'm working on a couple of things that I hope become things I can talk about, and
Yeah.
then just writing all the time. And then Sirius XM every night. We're doing Sirius XM. We just had Christoph Waltz on the show, and Ilhan Omar and Natasha Lyonne and Ryan Johnson and Eugene Levy, all basically the same person, but they've all just been on our show in the last 2 weeks. So
That's fantastic.
what time is the show?
our show is on SiriusXM Progress 127 from 9 to midnight, but you can always listen on the app or SiriusXM on demand. And if you don't have SiriusXM, you can always listen to the John Fugelsang podcast, which comes out every day and has the highlights of last night's SiriusXM show for free.
Well, at least you weren't prepared for that.
What is some of your picks on movies about stand-up comedy?
Yeah, I heard you guys were talking about this. I mean, my list is probably the same things that everybody else likes. I mean, there's lots of bad movies made about stand-up, but for films about stand-up that are great films. Now, my first question is, are these stand-up comedy performances like stand-up films or films about like Bill Cosby himself? Would that be considered a
No, like
candidate?
movies that are about stand-up comedians.
Oh, well, in that case, yeah. I mean, obviously, a film by Martin Scorsese called The King of Comedy is number one for
So
me,
good.
I'd have to say. But I mean, I think every comedian is going to have the same things, right? The Aristocrats, um, Man on the Moon,
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman as Lenny Bruce. That's definitely one of my top five.
I,
Um,
I've
it's
never
funny.
seen that.
The most realistic of what comedy feels like is the Joker.
yes,
You mean getting shot in the head on camera? Yes.
Every stand-up comedian had that fantasy.
The Joker.
I thought it was amazing that De Niro, who starred in King of
King of
Comedy,
Comedy.
was the successful late night comic in Joker. Because
Yeah,
to me, I don't think that script would have existed if King of Comedy hadn't been made.
Hmm.
And
yeah.
it seemed like a really nice little bit of casting and
Yeah, you're
a lovely
right.
companion piece. And hey, we were all trying for years to drag Robert De Niro into the DC cinematic universe. I mean, my Hawkman script, I pitched him so many times, he wouldn't even open it up. It's a beetle. He's blue. A beetle who's blue. That's not a hero. I'm not doing it. So yeah, I worked on De Niro for a very long time. And I mean, there's so many great films about like, I mean, there's so many great specials, but I really love this challenge to try and think of movies about stand-up that actually worked. I don't know if Dolomite is My Name would count really, but I would
That-
definitely put that on the list because I think Eddie Murphy deserved an Oscar for that and didn't even get a nomination.
oh,
And it's a
Yeah.
great, great film about creativity and about, taking your flaws and the things that make you shitty and making great art with it.
I love that movie so much. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, it's great.
It took him 5 years to get it, to be able to make it. And he's Eddie Murphy.
I know,
What
I
shot
know.
do we have at getting a movie made?
I was hosting the Writers Guild Awards that year, right before the pandemic happened, and I berated the entire audience for being so racist and not nominating Dolomite because it is so great. And like, if that movie had gotten Oscar nominations, I'm sorry. First off, Eddie Murphy deserved to win the Oscar for Dreamgirls. I'm sorry. I love Alan Arkin. He's a great artist, but come on, people, watch the two performances. Eddie Murphy's astonishing in that film. Dolomite again shows he might be the best actor that SNL ever produced.
Huh.
Wow, yeah.
Seeing him do like dramatic comedic work, it's great.
Yeah. What's your favorite Eddie Murphy movie? That's a good question. I love Eddie Murphy.
I do too. I mean, there's so many. There's some good ones, and there's a lot that are not worthy of his talents. I mean, I think 48 Hours is always just going to probably
That's a good
be
one.
number one, just because it was the first, and it was the most shocking, and it's the only film I've seen that really captured how electric and wild his talent was as a really young guy in the early 80s. Even his specials don't capture just
Mhm.
the exuberant genius and creativity coming out of him at all times. I mean,
That's
that
a
movie,
great point. And he had no idea what he was doing because it
he
was
had
his
no idea what he was doing. And Nolte's
Which-
great in it and balances him perfectly.
Mhm.
And that boy, thank God they never made a crappy sequel to that movie, huh? Huh?
Beverly Hills Cop, I can watch all of them back
Yeah.
to back,
what
over
was
and over.
what was the one he did with Steve Martin that
Bowfinger, which is really underrated. And
so underrated? He's
excellent Steve performance, and it's also no one said it, but it's a really tight Hollywood satire. It makes
Yes.
fun of everything from
Yes.
Ellen coming out to Scientology. I mean, Eddie Murphy plays like the Scientologist and the Nebuchadnezzar twin brother of the
Yes.
Scientologist. It's
and
great.
Steve Martin pretty much plays Mark Riccadonna.
I say thank you for giving me that much credit.
And you're right, he was tremendous in Dreamgirls. He really
he's great.
was.
He's great.
You know,
Yeah.
To have that kind of ability, to show off his musical side that well, and everything he did in it, he was just so good.
And then Haunted Mansion 2. I mean, my God, the work he did, the way he mined his soul for Haunted Mansion 2. How can you not admire where the guy?
The Nutty Professor, I don't know if it's because I was the right age when it came out. I mean, I watched that movie, I don't know how many times, just dying laughing.
Let me tell you, that's another great example of how the Academy Awards has nothing but contempt for comedy. Because Nutty Professor, no one's going to ever accuse it of being a great film, but Eddie Murphy won tons of awards for his performance with critics organizations and overseas groups that gave him Oscars. He didn't even get a nomination. He still only had one Oscar nomination his whole career. And yeah, I mean, The film itself is rubbish, but he's tremendous in it. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's like it's Peter Sellers times 10. Mike Myers keeps trying to do what Eddie Murphy seems to do so easily, playing all these different characters of different age and different gender. It's just great, just great.
Well, even like even though the script they try to be too serious at times, but Harlem Nights has that Blazing Saddles feel to it, where there's little things going on, little jokes underneath. Like if you ever watch when Red Fox is he's got the parrot behind him, and whatever he calls Delarice, the parrot is saying, and you have to watch it 4 times to get like, "Is you fat bitch?" You hear the parrot, "Fat bitch," and you don't even realize it's happening until like. I just found that so funny.
Now I got to go watch Harlem Nights again.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Long time. I know.
I fucking love Red Fox.
Delarice was hysterical in that. Huh? I got my mouth all watered up for tuna. So funny.
And then Pluto Nash, really, and that's it, you know?
Pluto Nash.
Fugelsang, it's so goddamn funny, man.
Well, no, I mean, this is a fun conversation. I never get to talk about this stuff because, I mean, I guess you could say Bill Murray is the SNL actor who went on to have arguably the best acting career.
The best acting career.
I guess like who came up, like Robert Downey Jr. I don't count.
Yeah, you can't.
Like Randy Quaid I don't count because he had a film career before he did SNL, before he ruined all careers. But like Bill Murray's just. I mean, I could watch Lost in Translation and just marvel at the simplicity of his performance over and over again. He's so great in it. Bill Murray's done so many great films that weren't big hits that he just delivers really good work in, like that Western he did with Robert Duvall and Groundhog Day, I think might be the best. Good. It might be the best movie that an SNL cast member ever did. It might be the most perfect film that a Saturday Night Live alum ever starred in.
Now, for all the shit he gets, Chevy Chase, when he did Fletch was so damn funny. But have you seen the remake with John Hamm?
I haven't. I heard it was good.
It's really good.
Really?
Really good. And like you watch it and you're going, oh my God, John Hamm is like out Fletching Chevy Chase. Like you see it. You see exactly how Chevy Chase would do it if he was doing it and John Hamm does it. It's like it's so interesting to watch because John Hamm has his own thing, but he pulls off that humor that Chevy Chase has so well. I loved it.
Now that I am allowed to watch something other than Oscar nominees, I'll try to catch up with Fletch.
It was not nominated.
Yeah, it was not. No.
It should be for costume design because he still wore the dress shirt, khakis, Lakers hat, and it was the exact same clothes Chevy Chase wore.
Chevy Chase had a lot of great movies back in the day. He had
a lot of hit movies.
Sure did.
Who do you consider the lead in Caddyshack? Speaking of Chevy Chase, who's the lead character in Caddyshack?
Well, the kid.
Yeah,
but he disappears later.
We
don't care about him.
Chevy always pops in my head first.
I'll say Bill Murray because he wrote it.
Huh.
I'm going to go with Rodney Dangerfield because he has my favorite scenes. He has nothing to do with the movie. He just shows up and is hysterical.
Well, I saw Chevy in an interview where he said you do a movie with Rodney Dangerfield and you go, oh my God, I can't believe someone could be this bad an actor. He said, he said, and then you do the second one with Jackie Mason and you go, wow, there is someone worse.
I had a summer when I first moved to LA where I followed Rodney every night at the Comedy Store on Sunset. Almost every night they would put me up after Rodney. I had a network show at the time and it was just crazy to watch Rodney work. He was 78 years old at the time.
Wow.
And every night he would go up on stage. It was always packed, and he would bring a piece of paper with him. He would just be wearing like a Hawaiian shirt and shorts and the crowd would go crazy. and this was the late '90s,
Bird
and
legs.
Yeah,
and he
really.
would bring and like he'd bring his tape recorder, or his wife would hold his tape recorder, and he would go on stage, and like I'd watched him do his set I watched him hone his set, because every night the page would get smaller. Like he would hold a piece of paper on stage with him to look down and see his jokes, and that's how he memorized. And every night he'd come back with a different piece of paper that was smaller than the previous night as he absorbed them more. And he had the best line, if he ever had a line, and he would do, old jokes. It was Rodney. He'd go up and he'd be like, guy goes to jail, and he goes to his new cell, and he sees his prison cellmate. And the cellmate's a big, huge guy, 7 feet, tattoos, muscles. And the guy says to him, you want to be the husband or the wife? And he says, I want to be the husband. And so the big guy says, all right, then, why don't you come over here and suck your wife's cock? I mean, he would open with jokes like that. And if he ever told, if he ever, and by the way, as soon as he got off stage, he would run into the bathroom and go into the stall, not to smoke coke, in spite of what you might think. To snort coke, he would go in to listen to his set on his tape recorder right away.
Really?
At age 77. He'd go into the men's room right away to listen in the stall with the thing up to his ear to hear how he did. And if he ever had a joke that didn't get a laugh, if he ever had a joke that bombed, he had this line he would use, fuck you, I'm 77 years old.
I love it.
It's great. Just great.
Who influences you as a stand-up? And you do such deep work. Like your stand-up.
You mean like my shiatsu? Because that's what I do just for corporate and private events. That's a different. That's George Carlin.
No, but your
George
writing
Carlin.
style is very deep.
Yeah, but that makes.
Very,
But he just answered it, and I
Carlin.
see that with John. Yeah.
yeah.
Carlin.
Smart and silly, political and goofy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
I mean
amazing.
Monty Python, smart and silly. I like him smart and silly.
Mm-hmm. Which is very difficult. Like it's
Yes.
to be silly, but to really bring something to it,
Have a point to it.
it's really hard. It's
Yeah,
probably one
I
of the-
find I have to write material and memorize it and know what I'm doing before I go on stage. It's very challenging. Yeah, but I mean, I'm influenced by every comedian I ever saw, including the bad ones. I get as much out of watching bad comedy as I do out of watching good comedy.
I'm right here. You can say my name.
No, I love what you do. I'm in awe of guys who can do like mainstream but edgy and be liked by a wide array of people. And I've only seen Mark give really interesting, really funny sets.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. That's awesome. Richie, how about you? Who's your influence? I've hung out with you so many times. I have no idea who your influences are.
Well, I always thought of, and my act is nothing like it, but to me, I thought the greatest comic I've ever seen stand up is Pryor.
Yeah.
Just because he didn't just do stand up. Like we talk about a one man show, he was doing that. He was playing characters. He was doing a performance when he, I mean, and then the other thing about him was no one lived his life. He had this amazing, like, horrible things that happened to him, and yet he could get on stage and talk about them and make them funny, which is just was unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
So I didn't know we were talking about I didn't know we were talking about the best comic we ever saw, because the best comic I ever saw was not George Carlin. The best comic I've ever seen in my life was Bill Cosby.
Interesting. Well, I didn't mean to turn it that way. You're right, because I
mean, no, but I saw Pryor as well. I saw I saw Pryor. I mean, I've followed Seinfeld. I've followed Chris Rock in the clubs. I have never in my life seen anyone that can do what Bill Cosby did.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
And that kind of talent has to have an incredible shadow. I don't know. Maybe someday something bad will come out about that guy. But
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. I think
He's
don't know.
America's dad, man. He's
I
America's
will never go see him again. And listen, let me just say, Bill Cosby is so against comedians working blue
yes.
that even when he is burning in hell for his crimes against humanity, he still in hell won't curse. That's how committed he is against working blue. When Satan is lacerating the flesh from his bones for his rape of so many women, Cosby will not swear. He has standards, people.
But really, he's the best you ever saw.
Best comedian. I saw him twice, once at Radio City and once at some college in Manhattan. And the college was an even better show. I mean, I've never seen a person do. The guy walks on stage, sits in a chair, 3 hours sitting in a chair, and you can feel the balcony shake. I mean, and it's like he's not expending any energy at all. When he does get up and do anything physical, it's miraculous. I mean, like as great as he was in the 80s, and Bill Cosby himself, seeing him live, nothing compares to just, I mean, he was like a shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, when I heard all the stuff that he had done, in a way, I wasn't surprised. Because when you have that kind of power on earth, you probably, like, lots.
Yeah.
Picasso was a monster to women as well. Brando, not the best boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
But like, just in terms of just like magic, I've never seen someone do what Cosby could do. Never.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, Carlin's my patron saint. Carlin's the one who changed my life. Cosby's just the one like, wow, I could never do that, but look what that guy can do.
Yeah. How about Richie for that? Who's somebody that influences you on your act? Not the best you've ever seen, but somebody who.
Wow. You mean it's somebody famous, obviously? Because like a lot of times people,
It doesn't have to be.
like people say to me, "Who's your favorite comic?" or "Who's the best?" and I go, "You never heard of them." Like I've worked with some great people, like a Cola. When I was first starting out, like Joey Cola was like, "Oh my God, I want to be like that."
Yeah.
He's a machine.
Yeah, a machine. Yeah. Yeah.
Just go on stage and it was like, wow, is that please, I hope that's cocaine. I hope that's cocaine. But no, it's Joey Cola.
And I love guys that are really irreverent, and I'm not. So like where you watch a Dave Attell and you just go, oh my God, and the things he'll say and he's not afraid to say, or and I'm like, and I just find I like a lot of guys that I'm nothing like. I like a lot of comics, and I think because when you see somebody you're like, you kind of go, well, yeah, I get how he did it. But when you see someone, you go, my God, how did you come up with that? Where'd you get that character? So I think that's kind of.
What about you, Mark? What about you?
So, well, it's weird because my two favorite comics of all time are Rodney Dangerfield and Eddie Murphy.
Wow.
Like when I see something that comes down the pike that's like something coming down the pike that I'm going, this is going to be a bit. This is going to be a bit. I think what would Rodney write and how would Eddie Murphy act it out? Those are the two things in my head when I see something coming.
I love it.
But the comics to me, and it was Stephen Wright and Rodney Dangerfield were the reason I even wanted to do stand up.
I see that.
I love just the goofy writing of like, they take something so simple and you're like, how do you take something that simple and make it in a way I'd never seen it before?
Exactly. I remember as a kid seeing Bob Hope praising Stephen Wright's joke writing.
Yeah.
And how much that inspired me.
Well, I was just on Tony's show before this, and we were talking about Stephen. I mentioned Stephen Wright, and Stephen Wright and Rita Rudner, for me, were like, see, I'm big on stage. I'm like, how do they get up there and they're not afraid to just be within themselves and
they bring you in.
Yeah.
Like
that. It's amazing to me when it.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
I mean, I think Boozler is one of the 5 best comedians I've ever seen live.
Right.
I mean, I saw Eddie Murphy once on the Raw tour when I was a teenager at Madison Square Garden, and I was shocked at how obscene and vulgar and homophobic and wrong it all was, and how hilarious it was. It was so wrong. I'm sure Eddie Murphy needs to do a stand-up tour just to apologize for all the horrible shit he said in his last couple stand-up tours. But just genius. But I mean, Cosby's one of the best I ever saw. Carlin is my North Star, but Elaine really is to me the model of what a working comic can do, and how you can if you just are willing to go right every day and keep on working at it, you can become like one of the greatest comics, and that's just keep getting greater. I think the stuff Boozler is doing now, when she does it, is the best stuff she's ever done. And I
She
hope
was
she's
my
not going to.
host on Live at Gotham.
Oh yeah.
And it was amazing because she did her opening 15 minutes on something that happened that week. Like, we shot on a Tuesday and something happened in the news on Monday, and she went up and did 15 minutes. And I was like, A, that you have 15 minutes of material on this thing that just happened. B, it was like polished, funny, and murdered.
That's like Jimi Hendrix doing Sergeant Pepper on the Sunday after it was released on the Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul loves to tell that story.
Yeah, boy. If only McCartney would tell that one in concert just once. That'd be great. Came out on a Friday. Came to see him on a Sunday. He already had it. Have I told you this one? During the pandemic, I swore that if Paul McCartney ever toured again, that I was going to take my child to see him. That nothing would stop. That if Paul ever gets to do a tour, I'm going. I don't care. And then Paul toured last year, so I had to take my kid. And it was the last show on the American tour, the last thing he did 2 days before he turned 80.
Right.
And and Springsteen came out on stage and sang with him. And my child had a horrible time. I kept him out way too late. So what I did was I just took pictures of all the fun parts and ignored all the parts where he was crying and saying, "I really need to sleep now, Daddy." And, all the stuff that Child Protective Services warned me about. You'll only remember the good parts. The trauma goes away. If you just have enough pictures of them smiling, you can convince your children it was a good memory. That's what I've learned.
Sure. Your son was out there going, "Why is Woody Allen singing with Paul McCartney, Daddy?"
I just did a podcast yesterday about Springsteen.
Oh, yeah?
And, yeah, we talked about our top.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Top 10 Springsteen songs. It took me 2 weeks to narrow it down and to finally figure it out. I had Richie and Gary in Boston in the green room helping me try to break this thing down.
Well, Gary did. I didn't do it.
Top 5 songs or albums, Mark?
Songs.
Songs.
Okay, yeah, that's hard.
I get on the podcast and both the hosts have lists. I made 3 lists. I have my favorite ones, his best songs, and songs that are meaningful. I'm like, you get 30 picks. This is not fair. This is not fair. It took me weeks to whittle this down to 10. And then they kept going, I can't believe this isn't on your list, Mark, but I went with this song. And I'm like, well, I didn't have 30 picks.
Oh, God. Well, fundamentalist Springsteen fans, good luck. I mean, why don't you just try, Muhammad's greatest hits with Al Qaeda? I mean, fundamentalist Springsteen fans they're there to explain that you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, that's the
one thing. I'm like, I know nothing, but I know I love Bruce Springsteen.
Right on.
Hey, John, our producer Tony Walker has a question for you.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, how are you?
I have a question for you. Why are you working with these guys? What happened? Like, is this part of your work release, like me, or
pretty much?
Did you just lose a bet? What happened?
I do a lot of laughing, and that's a good thing. You reminded me. I'm a big fan of your work, and you reminded me talking about the Beatles. Are you the one?
Yes.
Were you? Yeah, the last
George
Harrison interview.
Can I just tell you something? The first time he came on Drake's Shows of Storytelling, I didn't know John at all.
Oh,
Mark was his friend, and I was so excited that the guy who was the last interview for George Harrison on television, blah, blah, blah,
right.
And he came in and he wanted to talk about everything but music. And I was pissed.
No, I'll talk about music all day.
And you said that to me after the show. Oh, I'll talk about what we didn't.
Right. When you threw out to him, you were trying to get him to play some songs, and you said, "Never Gonna Give You Up." Who's the guy that sings that?
Yeah, Rick Astley.
When you said, "I'll take a Rick Astley medley," freaking funny, man.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
But to be able to sit there and talk to him at all,
it's amazing.
Have him play songs that he's never played live before, and then turn out to be his last interview. That must be. I can't even imagine what that must feel like for you.
It was pretty surreal. It was It wasn't his last interview. It was his last interview on TV.
TV.
Oh,
He did a
okay.
radio interview. He did one radio interview afterwards. It was the last time he performed in public.
Right.
I mean, such as it was. He played at Carl Perkins' funeral like a couple of weeks after that. But he was diagnosed with lung cancer 2 months after he came in to do the show. I was getting ready to go to London to do a special with Paul McCartney. And they called me up and they said, "Hey, we need you to stay in New York one day more." And I'm like, "Why? I want to go to London." And they're like, "Yeah, but we need you in New York Wednesday night for George Harrison." And I couldn't believe it. He came in with Ravi Shankar. He had produced the Chants of India record. See, back in the 90s, kids, a bunch of Benedictine monks put out a record called Chant, and it became a global hit because those were the kind of drugs we had in the 90s. Quaaludes were still around, and monks could drop albums. So George put this record of traditional Indian Vedic chants with Ravi Shankar, and it's great. It's heavy listening, but it's really cool. So they came in, and I was the worst interviewer of all time. Inappropriate jokes but
I thought you were great.
I thought it was
No,
great
I-
too.
I
Harrison
knew-
laughed at the Rick Astley line.
No,
Yeah.
he laughed a few times, but
Yeah.
I knew that if I talked about the Beatles, he would get up and leave.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew enough about him to know he didn't want to talk about John Lennon or the Beatles. I wanted to talk about spirituality, and I wanted to bully him into agreeing to tour again. Those were my two goals. And I told him before that I was ex-Catholic, like him. My mom had been a nun, my dad had been a Franciscan, and that he was someone who allowed me to, as I got away from the church, to go deeper into spirituality instead of just dropping it. And that, I believe that they say the largest growing religious group are Mormons. I think the largest growing religious group are people who were raised religious and now consider themselves spiritual because they're
I
turned
agree.
off to guys in dresses and funny hats and what have you. So he hung out, and I think he liked what a bad interviewer I was. I think he liked how raw I was. But the whole time you watch that, and he stayed for 4 hours. VH1 only aired like a 42-minute version of it. But my producer in my ear is saying, "Ask him about the Beatles. Ask him about John Lennon." And I just had to ignore it for like
Wow.
4 hours straight. And I'm glad I did. And then one of the guys on the crew, his girlfriend came to visit and brought her guitar. I put the guitar in his hands. We didn't know if he would play. He hadn't done a concert in America since the 70s.
Right.
And he played 4 songs he had never played live before. And
One of them wasn't even released at that time.
one of them wasn't even released yet. And one was a Wilbury song that Dylan had sung.
Right.
And then he left, and VH1 just aired like a 20-minute special. Nobody watched it. And then when he got sick, I was doing the comedy festival in Montreal, and they asked me to fly back to New York to do to redo the special because they were putting all the spiritual stuff back in, all the stuff about God and meditation and what happens when you die. That they got mad at me for asking the first time and left out the original special. When he got sick, they put all that shit back in. And so to this day, I'll have guys walk up to me in airports and say they never saw such a deep discussion of spirituality on TV.
Right.
At one point, even George says, "This is all getting a bit lofty for VH1." But it was good for me because I went through the experience of meeting my idol and being a moron and being ashamed of it. It literally was one of the things that first got me into therapy because I just felt so bad about it. And then over the years, seeing how much people liked it really was something that allowed me to forgive myself. And then I met his widow, and she said the nicest things. And I appear in the Martin Scorsese film for about 2.5 seconds, which takes some pain away. So yeah,
Wow.
it was great. And I just I love him very much. When my child was 4, I took out a dollar bill and I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "George." And I said, "George who?" And he said, "George Harrison." And I let him keep the fucking dollar. So
That's fantastic. Thank you for letting me ask that.
I
Thank
was
you.
watching Concert for George not that long ago, and
Such a great
it's
concert.
amazing. It's such a great, but it's amazing
I'm
how.
there. I'm in the audience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was doing the show Providence for NBC. It was the finale of the whole series, and it was Thanksgiving break, so we had 4 days off. And I just blew my entire paycheck on tickets to the Concert for George. And my girlfriend and I left the set on Wednesday, got a red eye. We sneaked out of the country, saw a concert, flew back. I was back on set on Monday.
Wow.
And it was the first time I ever used a passport to see a concert. And I blew my entire paycheck for the gig
It had to
on
be
the
worth
tickets
it.
for the show. And it was
worth it.
the best concert I've ever seen.
Best
Just
tribute.
incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I would just.
One of the best filmed concerts too. I put that movie right up there with
Absolutely.
right up there with Stop Making Sense or with what do you call it? The Last Waltz.
Last
It's
Waltz.
such a great
Yeah,
film.
you're right, John. It's so well shot. It really is. It's just, I'm just amazed at how many of those artists are now dead. Like that's what.
So
it's like,
many.
wow.
Billy Preston
Yeah,
and
Tom Petty.
and Gary Brooker from Procol Harum
yep.
sings Old Brown Shoe. He
Yeah.
came on my show after that. And yes, I mean, so many of them no longer
Jim
with
Capaldi from Traffic. He
Yeah.
was in that. Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great show. And Terry Jones, because Monty Python sang.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Well, that's the other thing
Tom
I was
Hanks.
that George had an amazing sense of humor, and I would love did you talk to him at all about Monty Python? Because he was
Yeah, a bit. He mortgaged his house to get Holy Grail made.
Holy Grail.
It's a great documentary about handmade films, and they just kept on losing money and losing money and losing money. But George just loved good comedies and and sometimes the films turned out okay. Sometimes you get a Nuns on the Run, which has
Well, he
one very funny scene where Robbie Coltrane explains the Trinity, and I think that's why George agreed to make the movie.
Yeah, what was that Shanghai Express?
Shanghai Surprise.
And I saw an interview with him recently on YouTube where they said, "What happened with that movie?" He said, "Well, Madonna's not funny," and he said she has no sense of humor whatsoever, and he just couldn't have been. And he said,
He hasn't seen her recent plastic surgery, gentlemen.
Oh my God! Yeah, it's hysterical.
The Chucky doll.
So I just thought that was funny. He came right out and said it. She's not funny,
Well, neither was the script, so it all worked out. But he was my favorite solo Beatle, and I loved his. I have a whole playlist of just George Harrison '80s shit because I love his guitar playing so much,
Right.
And I love how his guitar playing changed after the Beatles broke up, and
Right.
I'm just to meet your idol and then be a blubbering idiot convinced me I never needed to meet Bob Dylan after that.
Right. I thought you were great. I thought you did a
thank
great
you.
interview.
Thank you.
Really?
I can't watch it. It's too
That's
awkward
funny.
to watch.
Too much. Well,
It's like seeing junior high school replayed before my eyes. It's very
If you could be you now and go back into the interview, what would be one question you'd want to?
Great question, Mark.
I just tell myself to not try to be funny, just to relax and just talk. Now, I had just begun learning how to interview, and now I do it so much I'm dead inside. So I would just tell myself to just relax. And the one thing I did right was I talked about what I wanted to talk about. I talked about God and what happens when you die with him, and the producers were mad at us, but.
But John, he talked to you for 4 hours. You must have done something right.
4 years later, it really paid off. It took 4 years and a lot of hours in therapy to realize that I had made the right call.
But I'm saying that man would not have talked for 4 hours if he didn't like what you were doing.
Oh, I know, but I watch it now and I'm just aware of there's one point where he's saying, I remember when I first came to Hollywood and we met Burt Lancaster and I realized, Burt Lancaster, he's just a person. That's all he is another person. And I'm sitting there like, really, George? Tell me how that celebrity was just another person. That's so brilliant.
See, I think you're being hard on yourself.
I was hard on myself.
I mean, you're talking like you were Chris Farley and he was Paul McCartney, and that
I kind of was.
You weren't.
That's how it felt. That's how it felt. Believe me. And when we started that thing, the room was empty. Right, the studio was completely empty.
Right.
Nobody there. Everyone got on the phone and told everyone in the New York music world. And by the time we wrapped 3 hours later, Rick Rubin was there. The editor of Billboard was there. Like, if you watch it in the beginning, we're just talking, and then by the end, you'll hear a loud audience of people. Like, it's complete silence. You get a sense of how long it went on. Every couple of years, I go to my old producers and I say, hey, why don't we try to release the whole thing sometime? Haven't gotten there yet. He just turned 80. Maybe this year we can make it happen.
Wow. That'd be awesome.
Just as Joe Piscopo is the most muscular comedian, I want to be the most cerebral comedian. As long as funny is not the adjective, is what I'm going for. So I have all this shit on like string theory. It's not funny, but boy, is it smart humor. I'll tell you.
Maybe we got to get you on with Alan Alda then.
Oh, my cold fusion bits. Alan Alda is amazing. He's done my show a bunch of times, and he is. I mean, he's struggling now with his health, but he's still so sharp. And you talk to Alan Alda about science, it's like talking to George Harrison about religion. He just opens up and goes.
Really,
he's the only person whose podcast I listen to.
His podcast is great.
It's unbelievable.
And I saw him play Richard Fenneman in that play he did, the one-man show in L.A. years ago, and he was great. Oh, Alan Alda's. I mean, science and curiosity is that guy's religion. His podcast is dynamite.
I love it. Oh, thank you for spending time with us, man. It was so much fun.
I loved it. How often do I get to talk about Tim Kazurinsky? You guys just let me do that.
I thought you did that every day.
I get to talk about Jim Brewer on SNL before he found his calling as an anti-vax comic for Trump supporters.
Anti-punchline comic too.
Yeah. Oh no, honey, no. We like this now. This is our comedy. No, and we like Kid Rock too. Yeah, and Kanye West. No, that's what we like now. Yeah, Tucker told us. Just laugh. It'll get funny.
The next time we do this, it got to be in person. We got to make a trip into the city.
Yes.
Love to.
Thank you, John.
Come on over to my place. We're going to here.
Cool.
In my lovely basement studio.
I love it.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to see you all.
Thank you, John. You have a great one.
That's Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling.
Woo.
I mean, I got to go pee and get to the gym. I'll talk to you later.
Be good.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, piece of bad.